Single dad cried at his wife's grave, then a female billionaire left flowers and chained everything. The rain had no mercy that morning. It fell hard and cold, soaking the cemetery until the earth itself seemed to weep. A man knelt beside a single gravestone, his shoulders shaking, his hands pressed against damp grass, as if the ground were the only thing keeping him from collapsing completely. His cries were raw, unfiltered, the kind that come from a place so deep the body doesn't know how to hold them back anymore. People passing by slowed their steps, some pretending not to stare, others openly, shaken by the sight of a grown man breaking apart at his wife's grave. He had promised himself he would be strong. He had promised her. But that morning, strength abandoned him, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet miracles that can change a broken life. Take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes, the smallest actions create the biggest ripples. His name was Daniel, and until 3 years ago, his life had been simple in the way that truly mattered. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous, but he was loved. His wife had been his anchor, the calm center of a life that otherwise felt uncertain. Together, they raised their young daughter in a small apartment where laughter echoed louder than money problems. Then came the diagnosis, sudden and brutal, followed by months of hospitals, prayers, and sleepless nights that ended with silence. When she died, Daniel didn't just lose his wife. He lost the future he had imagined, the version of himself who knew what he was doing, in the sense that the world made any kind of sense at all. Since then, every day had been a negotiation with grief. Daniel worked long hours at a warehouse, lifting boxes until his arms burned, then came home to cook dinner, help with homework, and tuck his daughter into bed with a smile he practiced in the mirror. At night, when the apartment was quiet, the grief returned like a tide, flooding every corner of his chest. Bills piled up on the kitchen table. Eviction notices threatened the thin stability he clung to. Some days he skipped meals so his daughter wouldn't notice how little was left in the fridge. Other days he wondered, with guilt that made his stomach twist, whether love alone was enough to raise a child in a world that demanded so much more. The cemetery had become his only place of honesty. There, he didn't have to pretend. He could cry, beg, apologize, and remember. He visited on anniversaries, birthdays, and random mornings when the weight became too heavy. That day, the rain matched his mood perfectly. He told her he was trying. He told her he was failing. He told her he didn't know how much longer he could keep going like this. The stone, cold and silent, offered no answers he didn't notice. The black car at first. It was parked at a respectful distance, sleek and out of place among muddy paths and aging sedans. A woman stepped out, her posture calm, her movements deliberate. She wore no extravagant jewelry, no visible signs of excess wealth, yet there was something unmistakable about her presence. She moved through the cemetery not like a visitor, but like someone who understood grief intimately. In her hands was a small bouquet of white lilies. She stopped a few rows away, standing quietly as Daniel cried. She didn't interrupt. She didn't stare. She simply waited, allowing him the dignity of his sorrow. When she finally approached, it wasn't toward him, but toward the same grave. She knelt and placed the flowers gently beside the headstone, adjusting them so they wouldn't be ruined by the rain. Then she stood, took one last look, and walked away without a word. Daniel noticed the flowers only after she was gone. They were fresh, elegant, completely unlike the wilted ones he usually brought with what little money he had. Confusion mixed with gratitude, and something else he couldn't name. He looked around, but the woman was already driving away. He assumed it was a mistake, that she had placed them at the wrong grave, but the card attached said otherwise. It bore his wife's name, written carefully with a simple message wishing peace and remembrance. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Questions spun through his mind. Who was she? Why would a stranger care enough to leave flowers? The next morning, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He almost ignored it, assuming it was another bill collector. But something made him answer. The voice on the other end was calm, respectful, and direct. The woman introduced herself as Eleanor, explaining that she had known his wife years ago, long before Daniel entered her life. She spoke briefly, without unnecessary detail. and then made an offer that left him stunned. She wanted to help. Eleanor was a billionaire, though she never used the word herself. Her wealth was public knowledge, built through years of ruthless business success that newspapers loved to celebrate and criticize in equal measure. What they didn't talk about was her past, or the people she had lost along the way. Daniel's wife had once been one of those people. A friend from a time when Eleanor was still struggling, still human in ways money later complicated. When she learned of her death, she stayed away, believing she had no right to intrude. Seeing Daniel at the grave, broken but still standing, changed her mind. Daniel refused at first. Pride, fear, and years of surviving without help made him suspicious of generosity. He didn't want charity. He didn't want to feel like a project. Eleanor didn't push. She simply offered practical help, framed not as rescue, but as support. She arranged for his overdue rent to be paid anonymously. She ensured his daughter's school fees were covered through a scholarship. She helped him find a better job, one that paid fairly and respected his time as a father. Each gesture was small on its own, but together they began to shift the ground beneath his feet. The biggest change wasn't financial. It was emotional. For the first time since his wife's death, Daniel felt seen. Not pitied, not judged, but acknowledged. Eleanor didn't try to replace his grief or rush his healing. She listened when he spoke, respected his boundaries, and never asked for gratitude. Slowly, the constant tightness in his chest eased. He started sleeping through the night. His daughter laughed more. Their apartment felt warmer, less like a temporary shelter and more like a home again. As months passed, Daniel learned more about Eleanor, not from tabloids, but from quiet conversations and shared silences. Beneath her wealth was a woman who carried her own losses, her own regrets. Success had cost her relationships she could never buy back. Helping Daniel wasn't about guilt or image. It was about honoring a friend who had once shown her kindness when she had nothing to offer in return. The cemetery visits changed too. Daniel still went, but the tears came less often. Sometimes he brought his daughter, teaching her about love, memory, and resilience. On one visit, he found fresh flowers again, placed there before he arrived. This time, he smiled through the ache, understanding the meaning behind them. They weren't reminders of loss, but symbols of connection, proof that love could ripple outward. In unexpected ways, near the end of that year, Daniel stood at the grave alone, the sky clear and bright. He spoke softly, telling his wife about the changes, about the help that had come when he least expected it. He admitted that he was still scared, still figuring things out, but he was no longer drowning. He thanked her, not just for the years they had, but for the way her life continued to touch others even after she was gone. If this story is touching your heart, if it's reminding you of someone you've lost, or a kindness you once received, please take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need them most. As Daniel walked away from the grave, he felt something close to peace. Not happiness in the simple sense, but acceptance. Life would never be what it was before, but it could still be meaningful. It could still be good. Eleanor continued to be part of his life, not as a savior, but as a reminder that compassion doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in the form of flowers left in the rain. Before the story ends, take a second to comment below. Tell us what this story meant to you, or share a moment when kindness changed your life. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read. The rain never returned to that cemetery in quite the same way. Or maybe Daniel simply learned to stand through it. What mattered, as that he no longer stood alone. And in that simple truth, everything had changed.